You know, funny thing about Reliefband, I mean, going on 20 years ago now, well before Big Water Adventures even started, I was working for a tackle company and I went to a media event, and I don't know whether they were the original owners, I don't know who it was, but I ran into some people with this crazy Seasickness watch. And I was sitting at dinner with them, I'll never forget it, because at the time I was working on a headboat, and they were telling me about how this watch will stop seasickness. And I said, I don't understand. Watch, I'm thinking time, everything. No, that's not what it does. It confuses your central nervous system, and I remember that phrase. I'm a pretty simple guy. I don't understand a lot of scientific jargon, but what I understood was confuses your central nervous system, stops seasickness. Well, I got to thinking about it. A lot of the medications that are on the market today for seasickness, they pretty much dull your central nervous system. You start taking them anywhere from 24 hours to 48 hours ahead of time, and it essentially makes your body not pay attention to that tick-tock, 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 which makes you seasick. If you really stop and think about it, seasickness is just like spinning around in circles. If you spin around in circles a bunch of times, you start getting dizzy. Seasickness happens at a much slower pace, but it does the same thing. It's the same cadence over time. It's that motion, that's why they call it motion sickness, eventually starts making you nauseous and it makes you seasick. Well, when they explained to me that, quite honestly, this little watch, and I know it's not a watch, it's a Reliefband, but at the time, it looked like a little watch to me. And I actually have it right here. It's over 20 years old. This was a Gen 1. So when they handed it to me and they explained that you put the gel on there and you put it right here and it's just where your pulse is at, and it essentially confuses your central nervous system with that pulse with just a little tick, tick, tick of a little bit of a charge, a little electric charge. You can barely feel it, and you just turn it up as needed. Well, that all sounded well and good, but I'm thinking to myself, all right, I work on a headboat that takes 80 people offshore, anywhere from 60 to 70 of which have never been in the ocean, and anywhere from 20 to 60 of which on any given day could possibly get seasick. I'll take this thing, I'll use it, and me being in the tackle industry, these people weren't in the tackle industry 20 years ago. I'll give you some honest feedback. They were so excited about it, they gave me about 10 of these, and I gladly took them. I carried them, I put them in my bag, and I went to work on my headboat out of Charleston, South Carolina. It's a 110-foot headboat, carried 80 people offshore. In the first couple of days, quite honestly, I'd forgot I even had them in the bag. I saw somebody getting seasick, and I thought to myself, okay, let's go ahead and try one of these. Well, the sad thing about it is, once you're seasick, there's only two ways to get rid of it. You either get in the water or you get on land when the trip's over. That's the only two ways I've ever seen anything work. If you're taking Dramamine or your whatever prescription that you're taking for seasickness, once you're seasick, it's too late. You're done. It's not going to work. Well, I thought, all right, so here's the litmus test. Let me take my little watch here, and I went over to this guy and I said, hey, listen, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've got this little watch here that confuses your central nervous system, and as he's getting sick, he's not really paying attention to what I'm saying. So I said, just give me your wrist. So he hands me his hand. I put the gel on his wrist. I put this on here, and I've never used it before. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, to me, it seemed like he was pretty sick. So I went ahead and cranked it up to 5. Now I'm gonna tell you, if you put this on 5 to begin with, you feel it quick. It got his attention, and he looked at me like this, and I said, just, you know, I don't know, turn it down to 2, do something with it. Between him and I, we had 0 experience with this, and he was sick as a dog and as green as you could possibly be. To both of our shock, within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, the guy wasn't seasick anymore. Now, I'm not going to tell you he felt wonderful, because he had been essentially getting sick for the last 45 minutes, but he did not get sick again. And he said by the time he'd had that thing on for about an hour, he didn't feel seasick. He didn't feel lightheaded. He didn't feel the dizziness. He didn't feel the nausea. It actually stopped him from getting seasick. Well, I thought to myself, all right, well, maybe this guy is 1 in a million. Maybe this stuff actually works. over the course of, well, the next 10 years, I never saw it not work. Now, I personally don't get seasick unless I've got something going on, a stomach flu or something like that. So for me, this isn't something that I personally use. I'm gonna be straight with you. But if I ever started feeling seasick or motion sick or anything like that, there's no doubt in my mind it would work on me, because over the last 20 years, before Reliefband ever came back to me, I never saw those people again. I lost all but one of these. It's the only one I've got left. And when I say I lost them, I didn't lose them like out of my bag or dropped them in the ocean or anything like that. People would use them and tell me, hey, listen, that's the most amazing thing I've ever used in my life. I'll buy another one and I'll give you this one back. Well, you know, I didn't buy these. They were given to me. They were mostly friends or people that I knew or acquaintances or what have you. So over the last close to 20 years, this is the last one I've got. Now, this one particular belongs to my wife and my son. My son actually works with me part of the time on Big Water Adventures. He doesn't get seasick unless he's looking into a camera, an aperture of a camera or binoculars or something. Now, if you're at home, if you've ever been in the ocean and you're not prone to seasickness, if you start looking in a camera or a pair of binoculars, there's a reason they've got stabilized binoculars that actually stabilize the horizon. Because most people on a rough day would probably get seasick if they looked into a bunch of binoculars and pulled them down and you know, looked into them and pulled them down, looked into a camera. That'll make most people seasick even if you don't get seasick. My son wears this anytime he's filming with me. And the reason is because when he's looking at that small viewer, it's amplified the opportunity to get seasick. The odds are, if there is any chance of you getting seasick, the more you look into something like that, the more that you're probably going to get it. The neat thing about this is it's completely drug-free. You don't have to start taking it 24 to 48 hours before you go out. You can take it off immediately when you get off the water. What I have found from talking to people is, you know, when you first put it on before you ever even step foot on the boat, just turn it up to 1. If you start feeling a little bit nauseous, turn it up to 2. You won't really even notice it. If you've ever had like the electric therapy where they put the pads on you to stimulate your muscles, whether it's a lower back sore, you know, shoulders, arms, you notice they start it on low and they turn it up. Your body gets used to it. It's the same thing with the Reliefband. You start it on low and you just continue to turn it up, and as you're turning it up, you'll get to a comfortable level. I know some people that go from 1 to 5 in a very short period of time, they leave it on 5. Whatever works for you, but it'll work for you. This is the only thing that I know that is drug-free, that personally, from what I've seen out of the, no joke, 50 to 100 people that I have loaned these things out to, maybe even more than that, it's had 100% success. I've never had anybody put it on, go out and say, oh, I felt seasick and it didn't do anything for me and I took it off. I can't explain to you why it does what it does or how it does what it does. All I can tell you is it does what they say it does. Keeps you from getting seasick or motion sick. My wife, the next story, she doesn't get seasick. She gets car sick, motion sick. If she's driving, she's generally okay. But every year, my family tradition is we go to a Christmas tree farm in North Carolina. And there's about a 25-mile stretch of road that is maybe 200 yards at a time straight. And the rest of it is one of those where you can see it's up there and you can see it's down there and you can see you're going over there, and you've got to literally curl around the mountain about 45 times to get to where you're going. That 25 miles literally takes us an hour and a half because you can't go more than 25, 30 miles an hour. Without fail, if my wife is not wearing this Reliefband, there's no way, we're not going. I'd have to go 5 miles an hour the entire time to get her to that Christmas tree farm without getting motion sick. But when she puts the Reliefband on, she literally has no symptoms in the car. It's the same kind of deal. What this does is stops your central nervous system from getting used to that turning of the car, swaying of the boat. And I've even had people tell me that smells that used to get them. When you get on a head boat that is a diesel, or if you get on a boat that's a diesel And if you're at home right now shaking your head going, yep, diesel gets me every time. I don't know if it's the smell, the oil that's involved, what you're inhaling, but a lot of people will tell you, I smelled the diesel fumes of the motor when the boat backed down or went a different direction, or the wind caught them or whatever, they're instantly sick. Same thing. It stops you from getting seasick. That's all I can tell you. The interesting thing is, you're watching this video right now saying, yeah, he's a paid spokesperson. I am now, but the hilarious thing about it is, through mutual acquaintances, I got back in touch with Reliefband to tell them the stories from almost 20 years ago now, and why I'm carrying this dinosaur fossil around with me, because if you look at what you're gonna buy, it doesn't look like this. This was the original ones, you know, right off of the assembly line when they first gave them out as, try it and see if you like it. They didn't have nearly as much data as what they've got now. And I came back to them, quite honestly, to tell them the story, and they said, hey, listen, if you'd be willing to tell that story and get behind the product, I said, absolutely I would, because I've seen it work. I've seen it work multiple times. Kids, think about it. If you're taking a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid that gets seasick, it's gonna sour them to wanting to go out in the ocean to begin with. Do you really wanna put, you know, whatever, pick your drug that you got, or the patches or any of the other stuff, if you don't have to? If something like this is completely 100% drug-free and does the same thing. So give it a shot. I promise you, you look at the stars, look at the reviews, look at what people have said about this as it being a miracle. Obviously, it's not a miracle, it's science. But that same portion of your central nervous system that gets into that rhythm and gets going like this, and eventually it makes you nauseous and it makes you lightheaded, just like a roller coaster does quickly or spinning around quickly does. Seasickness is over time, motion sickness is over time, car sickness is over time. This keeps it from building up to where it gives you those physical symptoms. The thing to remember about this is it's not just for seasickness, it's for motion sickness. Any situation that you're in. I haven't tried it yet, and I kind of kicked it around and threw it at some of the people and asked them, had they sold it as this? I've got a 10-year-old daughter that loves roller coasters and loves to spin around. I can do the roller coasters. I can't do the teacups, whirling things, all that other stuff. I'm gonna take this, I'm from South Carolina, I'm gonna take this up to Carowinds and put this thing on and see, just out of curiosity, if the rides, the tilt-a-whirl, the teacups, the things spinning in circles that do make me motion sick, I'm gonna give it a shot and see if maybe it can give me some more rides with my daughter at the amusement park too. So think outside the box when you get this. If you're like, well, I don't want to spend that kind of money to go fishing in the ocean twice. Well, if there's any situation that makes you motion sick or makes you nauseous, you ought to give this thing a try, because I'd be willing to bet you, based on what I've seen, it'll work in almost any situation. And I've legitimately got 20 years of watching this, not getting paid by Reliefband in any way, shape, or form behind it, which is the reason I'm talking to you about it now. I've got that confidence in it because I've seen it work firsthand, and literally seen it on a headboat stop a guy from being seasick that had been throwing up for 45 minutes. And when I saw that, I knew I had to carry some around with me, because if anybody I knew was in that situation, I wanted to help them.